Okay, so on board 7, we have Ariel Mendez Peñate playing Austria. Jeff Dwornicki, sorry, Ariel is from the Bay Area, California, face-to-face and frequent gunboat online player as well. Jeff Dwornicki, another frequent face-to-face player from Oregon. Chris Lehman from Massachusetts. Frank Oosterom from the Netherlands and Germany. In Italy, it's Andre Janico from Portugal. Russia from Singapore is Advait Aranov, and Turkey, California player, frequent face-to-face player and tournament player Jason Mastbaum. So really a great international crowd on this board. Any comments on the lineup?
Well, I note just quickly, similar to the other board, the Russian player Advait Aranov said in his pregame info that the EGR is his favorite alliance, and he is in Russia. So not one that you get to see very often, but would be interesting to see if he's able to pull that together.
Cool. Okay, let's jump into the game. So here is our Spring 1901 moves. Doug, do you want to break down the East for us?
Be happy to. So I think that, Austria moves everything south. Looks like a pretty clear prearranged DMZ in Galicia. And then we've got the expected bounce in the Black Sea. And then Turkey goes to Armenia, which kicks things off pretty quickly. That is something to watch over there. Venice held, and otherwise Italy moved pretty standard to Apulia and Naples. So we have some interesting stuff. I'd be curious, is that an arranged bounce in the Black Sea? Most likely, but Turkey going to Armenia kicks things off in a pretty aggressive fashion. Not much really else to see here, except I did not note that Moscow went to St. Pete. So that's pretty interesting as well. So you've got a northern Russian with a Turkey that went to Armenia. So there's a lot to watch over there along that edge of the board.
Definitely the failure, the agreement not to bounce Galicia opens up these kinds of interesting possibilities for Russia, like going north, right? I mean, I think bouncing Galicia has become such a standard move that we often don't see a lot of openings like this.
I like the non-bounce.
Yeah.
One of the things that you guys will hear from me today is I really hate wasting moves. There's a time and a place for it, but in this instance, if you're Austria and you're Russia and you can agree to DMZ it, it's a good move for both powers.
Yep. In the West, Randy, anything interesting from your side?
You guys have already noted the only interesting thing I was going to note, that Moscow goes to St. Pete. Otherwise, England, France, and Germany, I have seen these moves and made these moves in virtually probably 90% of the games that I've played or watched. So very standard, solid openings from all of them. No one showing any sort of a hand too early. But that army in St. Pete, I think, might shake things up a little bit in the West. We'll see what that means longer term.
Yeah, maybe just worth noting the French move to Burgundy with an open Munich, and so that creates some interesting options and things for those powers to think about. All right, let's look at the fall. All right, what do you see, Randy?
Well, England's not getting the build due to some interesting tactical decisions. Goes to Denmark and the North Sea instead of the guaranteed build in Norway. So that England not getting the build in 1901 can really throw a wrench in the works for the West. It can really force Germany and France's hands, and it's going to take some fast talking out of England to keep from just getting dogpiled, because both Germany and France, France got 3 builds. France picked up Belgium, Portugal, and Spain, and Germany got Holland and Denmark. So I wouldn't be surprised to see England, Germany, and France to say, England's here, England has no builds, let's get rid of England and move on with it. Russia gets bounced out of Sweden, which is interesting, and moves to Finland. So we'll see whether Russia decides to join on the dog pile and maybe gets Norway and Germany takes Sweden, and so that can be a little bit more sustainable for both powers. Or if Russia's just going to get cut out of the North entirely here is also very possible.
Randy, I'm wondering, looking at these moves, the English moves look really strange, but I'm wondering if what happened was that Jeff talked the Germans into bouncing Sweden and then asked the Russians to move to the Baltic Sea. And that's really what you're seeing here, and told the Russians, in exchange for that, you can go Sweet Pete to Norway. You get Norway instead of Sweden. I get Denmark, and we strand that Russian fleet up in Sweden. That would have been pretty cool to see, but it looks like the Russians likely got cold feet. But I can't imagine why else Jeff would have made moves like this.
It's certainly possible that Jeff has outsmarted himself here.
Yeah, and it also flagged the support into Holland. Normally as Germany, I hate that because just move Kiel to Holland. It pins the potential German fleet in Berlin rather than having the flexibility to build in Kiel and potentially go to the Helgoland Bight. So I'm just interested in that. And he had the opportunity to bounce France and Belgium as well and didn't take it.
Yeah, if you're going to support the move to Holland, why not do it the other way, right? So you get that free Kiel up and you stay in Ruhr.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything interesting in the East from your perspective, Doug?
Well, I think we saw pretty clearly that Turkey telegraphed that they were going to move aggressively against Russia and did so. Romania stays open. So Russia doesn't get a build either. And that's pretty interesting. Austria and Italy both holding in Trieste and Venice. Looks like they've got some kind of accord going on. Convoy to Tunis. That's all interesting. Not much you can really learn from that other than looks like you've got a little bit of Austria and Italy, at least thinking about working together. Russia and Turkey are fighting. It's a good place for Austria to be right now. Okay. I like their position right now.
Let's take a look at the builds. So just real quick, France builds 3. Potential for some early leader syndrome here. Opts to go for 1 fleet and 2 armies. England, again, no builds. Germany opts for the fleet and army build. Italy goes for the fleet Naples, as you'd probably expect, as well as the 2 army build for.
Looks like Adam slowed down there for a second. I don't see anything unreasonable with the builds in the East. I am curious, Randy, would you put a 2nd fleet down in France right now rather than an army? What do you think?
If I were France, I probably would have waived that 3rd build.
Yeah,
you've got England. Yeah, you've got England getting no builds. You got Germany forced to build a fleet in Berlin, so is not going to be able to move super fast against England. So France, you've got the flexibility to build 2, hold 1, and see what your 2 neighbors do, and build accordingly in the next year.
Yeah, I mean, if I was France, going back a little bit, I actually wouldn't have wanted to get Belgium. I would have wanted to keep that open so that I didn't have the 3 builds and sort of burn that or waive it. Instead, keeping it open with an arranged bounce with Germany might have been superior for positioning, because then you can use that as a bargaining chip or go back and forth if you have a strong alliance. But with the French builds, I feel like, France has 2 fleets, but 4 armies on the board. What are you going to do with 4 armies right now?
Yeah, that's a lot of armies for France. That'll be interesting to see if that forces his hand into a more aggressive play than maybe he needed to make this early, given England's situation.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm jumping in here. Adam looks like he's having some technical difficulties, so I'll call this until Adam is able to get back on here. You guys ready to move on to spring of 1902?
Yeah.
All right. Which one of you guys was doing the East? Who was doing the West?
I was doing the East, and Randy was doing the West.
All right. Then Randy, tell us about the West, spring 1902.
Oops. Interestingly, if I'm seeing that correctly, it looks like Germany supported England into Belgium. So that early leader syndrome for France that we talked about earlier appears to have hit immediately. France moves into position to move on England and to defend himself, but he's unable to support Belgium, so he does lose that, and that unit is actually destroyed because he moved out to Picardy and Burgundy, and Germany covered Ruhr. So it looks like Germany is going to try to take advantage of the fact that England got no builds to form an alliance as the dominant partner in the EG, at least for now, which is an interesting tactic. It can work, so that'll be something to keep an eye on. Russia gets Sweden, walks into Sweden, and moves to the Baltic. Kind of an aggressive move. Be interesting to see if that Baltic, if that holds, if it supports Sweden, if it tries to get England to support him into Denmark, though I'd be shocked if England agreed to do anything like that, given that Germany has just brought him back into the game. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing in the West.
All right, Doug, tell us about the East.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to talk about in the center there, which I think is going to impact the East very significantly, is Germany didn't move either of his fleets. They just held, and that gives Russia a really strong position with Sweden. Whereas before maybe he might not have had that. So I want to just focus on that and just keep that in mind as we go forward. So the moves pretty much explain themselves. I'm not sure what Italy's doing, sending everything back, a little miscommunication with Austria. It looks like Austria was expecting Italy to go to the Aegean Sea, which means that Turkey got into the Aegean Sea. Here we see Austria supporting Turkey into Romania, backfilling to Bulgaria, moving to Galicia. Looks like, Ariel here is pulling Jason out of position to execute what could be a pretty strong stab, grabbing all of the Balkans. So I'll be looking for that. In the meantime, Russia's just holding there, doing the best that you can in the south. Two interesting things here. The first is this looks like it could be a really effective move by Austria, getting Jason out of position, able potentially to take Romania and Bulgaria and really take a dominant position there. And then Italy moving a fleet to Apulia. Where are you going? I'm not sure what Italy's doing there.
Well, plus if Italy intends to attack Austria here, then the convoy to Albania is what you do, not to Naples. It's going to take several turns to get this army into play. All right, right. Fall of 1902, and Doug, let's stay in the East with you.
All right, staying in the East, as I was kind of expecting, Austria takes Romania, holds Bulgaria. Turkey basically cut his losses and went back home. Of interest was Turkey's support for Italy into Greece. So Italy has made a play on Greece. You've got Venice taking Trieste. So you've got a lot of fun movement over there and chaos, which is exciting to see. Russia covered Warsaw, which gives Turkey the opportunity to retreat to Ukraine. And so you might have some kind of interesting Russia, Turkish, Italy, all around the periphery sort of containment.
Yeah, you're not feeling too good about this Austrian position now, right?
Not anymore. Not so much.
That's all right. Famous last words.
I'm not sure I would have executed this the same way when Italy failed to take my support into the Aegean and, convoyed back home. Instead, I probably would have been covering Trieste just in case shenanigans were afoot.
All right. Randy, let's go to you in the West. What do you say?
Speaking of chaos and interesting moves, everybody attacks everybody here. France retakes Belgium because England convoys to Norway so we can take St. Petersburg. Meanwhile, Russia forces Denmark. So the net result here is Germany loses Denmark. England gets back in the game, picks up Sweden, so he's getting the build. And France doesn't lose anything because he regains Belgium. So what looked like it was going to be a Germany-English alliance to take on the early leader in France is rapidly becoming a France-England alliance to work with Russia. I was going to say to work with Russia, and then I remembered that he doesn't have St. Petersburg anymore. This is looking more like either it's an EF or nobody's allied with anybody.
I had to do a double take to see if John Jameson was on this board because this is a mess.
He's played all four of them.
It's a mess, but don't you want to be France in this situation? You got a fleet on Belgium, and it seems nobody wants to attack you anymore.
You're in the channel. He's got a good shot there. I really like the attempt to backfill into Ruhr. It didn't work, but I like what I'm seeing there.
But nobody's friends with anybody, right? I mean, that's the. But if it's just a tactical gunboat mess, France is in the driver's seat. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, he's in the channel. He's got the fleet in Belgium, so he's got two in the north, and his armies can hold down his middle there. So, and Italy is way far away and is not going to do anything to him. So,
yeah, I guess
what happens here, it'll be good for France.
Yeah, the one downside is that Italy's getting a build, so that could portend future issues. But Italy seems to have enough to I'm sorry, Italy's getting two builds. Oh, all right, that could be a thorn. Why don't we move ahead here and see what happens with the builds? Italy puts down an army and a fleet, probably at least happy if you're France not to see 2 fleets. France goes with an army build.
Oof.
And in Paris, this is that's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's a tactical mistake. France doesn't need the extra army. He needed if he needed anything, he needed a fleet.
In Brest.
Bray.
It's like, yeah.
Especially with England, something that I had missed in the last one. England got 2 builds because England picked up both Norway and St.
Pete, right? And also take a note, France's armies are stuck behind a fleet in Belgium.
Yep.
So that is going to be really challenging to sort of unwind that.
If you want to attack Germany, right?
Yeah, but
So.
You've got all the armies on the board. You can't really prosecute an attack effectively against England with just 2 fleets.
The army in Paris doesn't help him attack Germany, and not building a fleet means he can't attack England. So he's really kind of handcuffed himself here.
All right, I am going to turn this back over to Adam, who's going to take you for another year or 2 on this board. And let's see if we can get this working. Adam?
All right.
Adam,
Am I coming through okay?
Yeah, can you hear us?
Yes. I'm going to just...
All right.
Okay. Well, sorry about the technical issues there. Technology. Hopefully that won't happen again. All right. Have we hit the winter? Should we move on to spring?
Well, we didn't quite get to the east.
Okay.
I do think it's interesting. The Turkey pulled that fleet in the Aegean, leaving the army, which signals to Russia like, hey, I'm going to be helpful to you, rather than aggressive. And the Turkish position for being at 3 is not disastrous because there's no fleets attacking his homeland right now. So, he does have some opportunity here. He could coordinate with Russia, with Italy in that position. If Russia and Turkey can get together and do something together, they both have some interesting opportunities this turn.
Okay, let's take a quick look. All right, so let's take a look at the spring turn. And Doug, you want to start?
Well, so much for Turkey and Russia working together. This is a pretty defensive move right here by Austria, which it seems fair. But I will note, look at the destruction of that Austrian fleet by Italy. That must have been planned because there's no attempt by Austria at all to take either of those Italian dots. So it looks like Austria made a deal with Italy and they're going to just dig Turkey out of the corner. And I don't see a lot of play going forward for Turkey. Russia, piff the unit rather than work with it. So that's pretty interesting.
Right.
Otherwise, yeah.
Okay. Randy, you want to comment on the West?
Yeah, I mean, this is from England went from getting no builds in 1901 to being kind of in the driver's seat here. France's extra army doesn't give him any flexibility, doesn't give him any additional tactical abilities here. So he just bounces everything against Germany and moves out of the Channel, which was his one strong tactical place that he was in. He pulls back to the Mid-Atlantic. So he's obviously trying to make nice with England, but he's lost any control over the situation that he had, and England is now is in the driver's seat. England shuffles around his army and fleet up in Norway and St. Petersburg to pull that army into Finland, the fleet back to Norway, so that he can better support the North Sea, and maybe he can get himself help get himself into Holland with French help. That might be what he's aiming to do: pull the North Sea down into Holland and use London to cover the North Sea with support from Norway. Russia and Germany look like they've decided they don't want to be the odd ones out here, and they're going to try to coordinate here. But right now they're kind of just in a holding pattern, and England is going to get to dictate a lot of the pace of what happens in the next turn or two, I think.
Well, and going back to what we talked about just briefly, Randy, last time, I mean, France bouncing all those units in a chain, he would have been much better served pulling the fleet out of Belgium and to the English Channel and rearranging his army so that he can actually get those moving on a broader front.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, let's move on to the fall. And all right, some interesting moves here. Randy, what do you see?
England sacrifices St. Petersburg in order to get Sweden, which is better because now he's gotten rid of that pesky army and he can retake St. Petersburg whenever he wants. So he has solidified his position up there a little bit. Germany's and Russia's alliance was very short-lived as Germany retakes Denmark. And France does finally pull that fleet out of Belgium, which wasn't doing him any good. He pulls back to the Channel, but most of his army still don't do much of anything. So, again, like where early on in 1901, early first part of 1902, it looked like France had the momentum. Now England has the momentum, and France is kind of spinning his tires.
What do you see in the East, Doug?
Well, Russia is, carrying the grudge against Turkey, not working there. But really what's interesting over here is the Italian-Austrian inability to work together. They both tried to stab each other, and locked each other in place. And then the Italian fleets moved. So he's now sort of strung out Tyrrhenian Sea, Ionian Sea, Aegean. That's not bad. And being in the Tyrrhenian Sea gives him some real interesting possibilities against France if France starts drifting. So, I quite like the Italian move to the Tyrrhenian Sea and unwinding, because having your fleet in Adriatic with two armies there doesn't really help. So I'd be curious. The lack of trust in the East is really playing out here. Nobody is working with anybody in the East. Nobody has consistently worked with anybody. And if two of these players can actually kind of get together and work together, they can get a lot done. Now, I'd be interested to see if Italy and Turkey can work together to retake Bulgaria, for example, because that could totally happen. If they actually work together, they should be able to take Serbia and Bulgaria next year.
Okay, let's move on and take a look at the builds. So Austria actually had a build coming and obviously puts the army down in Vienna, which definitely solidifies his position if he's continuing to fight with Italy. Turkey, interestingly, puts down the second army, probably the right call there, though shows some trust with the Italian. Russia makes the flexible build of Army Moscow, and Germany makes the build of Army Berlin. What do we make of that? That seems kind of strange, given that it seems like he's been being toyed with France for some time. What do you make of that, Randy?
I get it. I think Kiel probably would have made more sense, but I think he did need an army, given that France has spent the last year just throwing his armies at Germany and not accomplishing anything. But if Germany doesn't build an army, then France, with a little bit of help from England, could break through. So I think the army build is Germany saying to France, you can keep doing it, but you're not going to get anything, and you're just going to let France continue to mop up north. Oh, I'm sorry, England. You're going to let England mop up north.
Yeah, with Helgel in there, England really is in a very strong position at this point. Let's not forget that. You can always move Munich to Ruhr with support from Holland and drop Berlin to Munich, which is a strong play there to just sort of keep things static, with Helgoland supporting Holland or Denmark. But what I'm looking for is, what is England going to do? Is he going to try and, combine to grab Denmark, or is he just going to try and push those armies north against Russia, which is kind of what I'm expecting, rather than an attack on Germany.
Agreed. I'd expect to see England take St. Peter. Well, and there it is.
There we go.
In keeping with this board, what we expect is not what happens.
Exactly. And over to Denmark he goes. All right. Let's start there, Randy.
That's an interesting play. It wasn't guaranteed. Germany could have held Denmark, but somehow, whether England and France just did some real fast talking and got Germany to throw himself against Russia, instead of defending any part of his possession. And Germany is now in some real deep trouble here. England takes Denmark, France gets into Ruhr, and is going to be able to try for either Holland or Munich. I mean, I said in 1902 it looked like England and France might be, or England and France might be able to work against Germany, and now they absolutely are. England and France have put Germany in a real tough position here. Really, Germany has put himself in a really tough position here.
Well, and it looks like he's suiciding. He moved to Silesia and Prussia. And, I mean,
that might be
ran.
what he's doing, and I don't get it because Russia hasn't done much to him. But maybe England and France convinced him that he was going down anyway, and they would let him live longer if he throws his armies against Russia. I'm not sure what Germany might be thinking here.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
All right, it looks like in the East maybe some coordination we're starting to see. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, we've got Russia dropping the fleet to Armenia, and the key in this whole thing, actually, it worked, was the convoy to Smyrna. That potential friendship between Turkey and Italy that we were just talking about, or at least I was just talking about, clearly not there. Nobody's really working with each other at this point, despite appearances. I mean, the number of lies that must have been told between the four of these powers is pretty high. But Italy is still able probably to defend Greece. At this point, I'm expecting Austria to try and take Trieste back. And maybe that's part of the deal here is I take Trieste back and you take Smyrna and Khan or something like that. I could potentially see that.
Okay.
But yeah, I was just going to say Russia is going to lose Warsaw. So that's got to be something he's paying attention to.
Yeah. All right. Let's just move on to the fall and go ahead, Doug. Why don't you start?
Okay, well, Germany took Warsaw. Russia supported England into St. Petersburg. I don't even know what's going on over there. Walk to Ukraine. Okay, it looks like he's going to suicide against Germany potentially. We've got the Italian moving west and the Austrian moving north. So they're actually working together. And Turkey's down to 2. Interesting that Bulgaria did not go to Khan, but it looks like they just wanted to play the safe bet. So Italy gets 1, Turkey's down to 2. Austria is in pretty decent position sitting up there in Galicia now to make a play for Sev or support Germany. So we'll just have to see where that goes. And then Italy moved west, but did not go to Piedmont.
Right. Okay. And in the West, Randy?
Well, the German and Russian blood feud is going to work out pretty well for England and France, particularly France, who just gets 2 builds, who gets Holland and Munich. So I think we can expect to see 2 more French armies on the board any minute now.
Yeah, and I think England is building 2 as well from St. Petersburg and Denmark. So just a massive term for the EF, and it'll be interesting to see now that the kind of Germany is more or less not in great shape, how long that lasts in this game. So let's take a quick look at the builds, and then I think we'll move on to the next game. Here we go. So Germany, as expected, disbands the units that are furthest to the west so that he can continue his blood feud against the Russians, and the Russians keep Moscow and Ukraine so that he can maintain his blood feud against the Germans. Just really quite a remarkable situation there. Turkey disbands Constantinople, probably no good choices there, but makes sense that he would keep the fleet in the Black Sea for the greatest flexibility. Italy builds an army in Rome, which is kind of interesting, whereas France builds 2 fleets. So that's kind of not what you were thinking, Randy. Why don't we talk about that?
Oh, sorry. I was being sarcastic when I said
okay.
Build 2 armies just because France had a massive imbalance of armies.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll get worse. But no, he addresses, he correctly addresses his imbalance, and he now has a very good position.
Yeah. And actually, it's a pretty careful build. He's not totally trusting England. So he's basically saying, I'm going to send 3 fleets south, but I'm going to keep 1 here in the channel to keep you honest.
Yep. And my be interested to see what happens here. France and Italy are probably – it's going to take a little while before France gets any builds off of Italy. Meanwhile, England can kind of help himself to Kiel and Berlin. So we'll see how that dynamic plays out between England and France.
Okay, real quick before we move on, who do you like on this board, Randy?
If I had to pick one power to be, I would be England still.
Doug?
Just to be different in this one, I would want to be France. I think that France can force Kiel right now, and that can't be stopped. So France has a build in the bag, and England's still a little blocked up in the north. So I think France has a little bit more of an advanced position.
So let's advance this. And Doug, why don't you jump in and give us this position?
Right. I was taking a look at the East, and Randy was taking a look at the West. I think that the interesting thing here is you've got Russia helping England down into Livonia. You've got Russia helping Austria into Sevastopol. So that looks like Russia may be going down here real fast. In the meantime, Austria and Italy are continuing to work together. Got some bounces with France, so they're reacting pretty effectively. I think there's some good, solid strategy here with Austria and Italy working hard to really do their best to stop this pretty massive EF. But they've got to kill Turkey in order to get that done.
And if you're the EF, you still rolling this? You're happy?
Yeah. I don't want to jump on Randy's train here, but I'm very curious about that English Brest hold.
This is one where, if I recall correctly, in like 1902, Germany and Russia decided that they hated each other, and they kind of just suicided into each other. And France is clearly taking advantage of that. He's forced Kiel, and he'll be able to force Berlin next turn unless Germany decides to change his mind. So, yeah, if you're EF, particularly if you're F, you're absolutely keeping this going. I mean, you're walking into dots, so there's no reason not to. E, if you're England, you might be a little bit more nervous about this because France is walking into dots, and your next dot is not particularly clear.
All right, let's go to the fall. And Randy, you want to break down the fall for us?
Yep, here we go. England forces Kiel, though that I was going to say that might have been agreed upon with France, but France actually did try to hold it, and the support in Munich was cut by Italy. But England doesn't make any attempt to hit the channel. He just tries to ineffectively hit Holland, which I'm not sure I understand that. It seems like it would have made more sense for him to put two on the English channel. But he does force France out of Kiel. France retreats to Berlin, so France is still building, as is England. And France and Italy continue to bounce over the med. France is probably happy to just hold that position until he figures out what's happening up north.
So do you think this was a legit stab on the part of England, or he retreated?
I can't tell. If it was,
the net result of this is not really that problematic, right?
No, I would be inclined to think it might be a stab because he does try to move to Holland, and France clearly didn't want to give up Kiel. But if it is a stab, it is not terribly effective.
Doug, anything you want to add?
Well, the East here resolves pretty effectively. Turkey is gone, and Austria and Italy split that up. Italy gets another build. That's pretty important. Austria gets another build, can put another army down in Vienna to rush to the center of the board. So they've acted really quickly and in concert to counter the EF, and they seem to be working together. And, with the breakdown of the England and France, it looks like Russia's facilitating England trying, a little bit. So that's nice. So, I think pretty strong play here by AI. They take out Turkey, which gives them a safe rear, and they could focus all their forces forward going on now.
Would you have liked to see more aggression with the Bohemia Galicia units instead of self-bouncing in Vienna, maybe trying to take a shot at taking Silesia or something like that?
Well, I kind of would be interested if you're in Galicia. Why aren't you helping England into Warsaw there, which is a weak position for England, but is very powerful for me? Self-standing in Vienna. If Italy's stabbing you here, you're going to get worse than just that. So protecting that one dot doesn't seem like a good use of those units. Bohemia could have cut Silesia, Galicia could have put Livonia in there. you could be putting Moscow in. So, yeah, not sure.
All right. So let's jump ahead to the builds. And this is pretty, is this actually the end of Germany? Germany has Warsaw left and pulls Warsaw, leaves Silesia, which is an interesting choice. We bid goodbye to Turkey. Russia removes Moscow, keeps the one unit in Ukraine. And then in terms of builds, we see a French army and an English army. Probably no, well, maybe surprises there. I don't know. I think England had some interesting choices. Could have put a fleet in Liverpool if they really thought there was a stab coming. France could have built another fleet if they really were going wholehearted. What do you see, Randy?
I see the EFs continuing. If that was an attempted stab by England, which I'm increasingly thinking it probably wasn't, England quickly realized that it wasn't going to work, builds the army instead of antagonizing England with France with the fleet in Liverpool. Army and Eddie can get convoyed into, probably going to try to convoy that into Denmark, or maybe go over the top, or just leave it on the island in case France gets picky. But my guess is England is happy playing for second here and letting France just continue to push through the middle.
Okay, let's look at spring 1906. Doug, break it down.
Well, first of all, I really liked Italy's put of an army down here. They didn't really need another fleet because they've got Aegean, and putting another fleet down is not going to ultimately be helpful for them. So I was pretty excited by that build. I thought that was a really very clever move in this instance. So they've got enough really here to stop, and they just snuck into Marseille, which, you know, is really pretty nasty. Even if it doesn't lead to a whole lot, slipping that army through right now into Marseille, you get dislodged, you're going to Gascony. You just created a world of hurt for France. This is a huge mistake by France. This is a devastating move right here. The only thing that, you know, you would have loved to have seen here is if Italy had gone to Piedmont, but you don't expect that's actually going to work. so you wouldn't normally do that. So I thought that was a really good play. I'm a little disappointed right now in Austria, mostly just holding in place. I want to see you get up to the line here and do something. Don't just sort of hang out here.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that Austria is making all of these defensive moves when he's really the one in the position to devastate Italy right here. I mean, sliding down Khan and, you know, and Bulgaria, you could take both Turkish dots. So it's kind of interesting to see such conservative play.
You know, if Austria is getting ready to stab Italy, then, you know, I see why that would make sense. You know, if I'm Italy at this point, I've got to really think hard about going Ankh to Khan and Ionian to Greece just to cover, because, you know, I don't like that Austria is sitting there, and here I am starting to really push west, and I slip through the line. And what are you doing? Why aren't you pushing up to the line? Why aren't you moving forward? Yep. There's no reason for Bulgaria to still be there. They could set up détente with Ankh and Khan.
Especially since the Russian army in Ukraine can just walk into Romania. Why isn't he covering Romania, right?
Yeah.
All right. Fall. All right, there things start to move along. I guess, Doug, I think, are you up for this one?
Sure, I'm ready to go here. You know, the West is still doing a lot of pushing pieces, reacting to Italy getting through. Nice job, you know, coming down to Gascony. You had to do that, but you gave up the West Med and the Gulf of Leon for that. And now you're going to see Italy slide down to North Africa and draw the lines. You need that fleet to you need that fleet in the English Channel to be in the Mid-Atlantic right now, and it's not, and that could be costly. So we'll see how that plays out. And we see Austria move up to the line, which is what needs to happen in this instance. They need to be pushing forward as fast as they can. They take Warsaw. It's a good turn for AI in this instance. And I see a little bit of conflict in EF on the other side of the board, which, you know, can only help the AI.
Yeah, a savvy move by Italy here might have been to order Marseille to Gascony to either bounce it or actually end up there in the event of something else happening. But he actually held. All right.
This is overall a solid turn for England as well. I mean, they picked up 2.
Yeah, so right now we have England and France both tied at 9, Italy a little bit behind at 8. I mean, who do you guys like at this stage? It looks like this game has one more year left.
I mean, I guess I like England.
I mean, England could gain Holland and Berlin if they want it.
Yeah.
It's theirs to take.
England has a couple more builds to get. Italy really doesn't without stabbing their ally, which pretty badly upsets the balance.
You know, I don't see any growth here really for Austria or Italy. If Russia is willing to work with them, they can retake Moscow.
I think Russia's dead.
Russia is dead.
Yeah, no, you're right. Russia's out, so you know they can't get. Yeah, they didn't put the fleet in Liverpool, so they're not going for it. This game's going to draw out. I don't see any shaking these alliances, most likely.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've got a 9-9-8-8, so it's really in the very fine territory of dot counts. So let's see how this goes. Randy, you want to break down the spring?
Sure. Yeah, the alliances remain, as Doug suggested. Italy puts themselves in a position next to Mid-Atlantic, but with France's build of a fleet, I mean, they're just jockeying for the line here. I don't see any particularly significant moves here. I think they're just setting up to the 2 9 powers want to make sure they stay at 9, and the 2 8s are trying to get to a position to go up to 9 if someone else makes a mistake. But I don't see anything materially changing in this turn.
Was there a misorder in Eddie going to Kiel? Because I see the convoy to Prussia.
So it looks like convoyed yeah, there was a misorder. He convoyed North Sea convoyed Kiel to Helgoland. So that was clearly a misorder. Yeah.
That could be costly. It gives France the opportunity to take Kiel if they want it, and there's not anything England can do about it. But with the pressure,
France is in Holland, though. France is not in Holland, right?
No.
Just to walk in through Munich and Berlin, you're saying?
Yeah, I mean the thing is that it's costly, but it's not devastating. Because they're in Prussia, they can still hold Munich. Silesia, Bohemia, and Tyrolia aren't going to be able to crack Berlin and Burgundy. So, you know, a little lucky that misorder didn't cost.
Okay, and let's take a look at the fall. And it looks like not a lot of things happening here. Doug, you want to just comment real quick?
Austria is going to take a dot from Italy. That's really the only thing that's going on here. Everything else is a whole lot of nothing. Eddie does the correct order, gets in there. So, you know, looking at the scores here, it looks like Austria is taking 1 off of Italy to, you know, probably in an arranged move here, maybe to tie for the top of the board, is what it looks like.
Yeah, and I think that's what we've got at the end. I think this is it. And so what do you guys feel like this is the right place to stop? If you're anybody on this board, do you want to keep playing to try to get a sole possession of the top? If you're Italy, do you want to punish Austria? I mean, if that wasn't agreed, I guess maybe that was agreed. Who knows?
It was clearly agreed because Austria pulled Ankh, you know, and that would be another dot. I'm sorry, Italy pulled Ankara. Yeah. You know, I don't know that I want to pull at this point if I'm England, because France does not have great position, but yet, you know, it's really tough. I don't see Italy backing off that line. So I could go take Belgium, Holland, and Berlin and Brest. So I can go get 4. You know, Italy's probably going to get 3. You know, then you're fighting over Paris. You know, you probably top the board if you're England and you swing for it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I probably would have kept playing as England, because even if, you know, you stab France, and even if he pulls off the line and lets Italy walk into those dots, you can get, as Doug said, you can get 4 before Italy gets 3. If I'm Italy, I think his decision to let Austria just take a dot and pass him in the rankings was a questionable decision, particularly considering that he then pulls the only thing that could keep Austria from taking another dot or 2, because Greece is open too. So my guess is that, diplomatically speaking, Italy was very frustrated at the Western powers and wanted to show them, hey, if you don't end this game, I'll let Austria take sole possession of the top. And that probably is what ended it. But yeah, I agree. If I'm England, I still keep playing anyway.
Right. I mean, Italy can pretty much say, you know, look, all I need in this situation are 4 units, the 3 fleets and Piedmont. I can give Austria, Ankara, Greece, and Trieste. No problem. So, you know, Austria's got 3 in the bag. So if you guys aren't going to just end the game, I'm going to keep going. But, you know, if I'm Italy in that scenario, I should be able to read here that England is the one that could grow. I don't know why you'd be frustrated with England. You've been fighting France. So if England's jumping on France, I want to preserve my option to go and grow and see what I might be able to do. Who knows? I might be able to outfox Austria in, the East if I keep that flexibility.
All right. Well, that was a great game. We can congratulate Austria, England, and France for the shared board top on that. And let's